I like the.
I know.
So this is always the behind the scenes chit chat people get to hear.
People get to hear our deep and dirty secrets. I'm just kidding.
Hello,
Hi.
hello, everyone. How y'all doing? How y'all feeling today? I'm excited. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this week's edition of Ask the Experts with host Liz Machiavel and myself. As always, this is your stream, so make sure in the comments that you introduce yourself, let us know where you're from. Also, tell us why you're here. Sometimes you're supporting yourself, you're supporting a loved one, you might be a clinician, or you might be somebody who is very excited about a big event that we have going next week and just want to hear a preview. So whatever you're here for, just let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear what brings you out to the live stream today. So today is a special edition of Ask the Experts. Usually it's just Liz and I answering your questions, but we are going to be highlighting something exciting. So Liz is going to promote the stream and let you know what is going on. I'm going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping first. As you can see, we have two lovely guests, which I'm going to introduce in a second. But before that, we have some intro kind of general housekeeping that we want to make sure that you hear. So always remember that the live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your provider or contact a local clinician. You can always use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help to locate a trained clinician near you. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you are in a crisis or you're ever feeling unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or now the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You can also access it online at 988lifeline.org. And then lastly, we want to create a safe space and be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. And a note that this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being recorded live. Final announcements, of course, the big OCD conference is coming next week. That's what we're going to be talking about for this hour. So make sure, if you haven't already, go to iocdf.org/OCDcon to sign up. And then lastly, normally I announce this at the end, but I just want to make sure we say it at the beginning and the end. We won't be here next week. There'll be no live streams because we're all going to be at the conference. But when we come back on Tuesday the 11th, there's a community conversations. And then Wednesday, July 12th, both Kyle King and John Abramowitz will be doing a research roundtable. All right, so you're staring at these two lovely ladies on our screen, and you're probably like, who are they? So I'm going to introduce them. So first we have Steph. Steph is the program director. Stephanie develops new programs for the entire IOCDF community, maintains the quality of the IOCDF's current programming, and oversees all educational content on our various websites and print materials. Stephanie has worked at the IOCDF since 2013. Happy 10 years, by the way.
Thank
and
you.
Is passionate about public health. She has a master's of public health and a master's of social work, and is a member of the American Public Health Association's Mental Health and Public Health Social Network sections. Ella habla español también. Gracias. Thank you and welcome, Steph.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yeah.
Yes. And our other lovely guest is Susan Boaz, who is a mom and an advocate for everyone suffering from OCD and their families and friends with an interest in pediatric and maternal OCD and the impact of OCD on families. She also focuses on autoimmune and inflammatory OCD components and is the ED of the PANDAS Physicians Network. She loves working with the youngest members of our community and their parents. She's especially excited that the IOCDF continues to launch programs for kids and teens like the IOCDF's OCD Camp for Kids. She is the president of the IOCDF Board of Directors, and she's also an entrepreneur. So welcome to the stream, Susan.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, so Liz, tell us what we're doing here. Today's a very exciting and special stream.
It is. You know, I was thinking about this morning on my way to work, that I don't know that we've ever done this stream before. So I'm just really excited to do it, just because I think that, you know, a lot of times we get so excited for this conference and we're like looking forward to going. And then sometimes, candidly, people get there and they're like, this is overwhelming. I don't know what to do or where to go or how to navigate this. And so I just love that today we're going to spend some time breaking it down and helping you kind of prepare for the conference and how to make the best of the conference experience for you. I know every one of us on this panel, and I want to start with that. And first of all, Steph, I cannot believe it's been 10 years. That I feel like time goes slow sometimes, and then it's just so fast. Like Chris was saying about the conference earlier, he's like, it feels like the conference is forever away, and then it's just here. Like, that's amazing. And obviously Susan is the president of our board of directors, and I really want Susan to share a little bit as well about, I first want us to talk about why this conference is meaningful to y'all and what your goals are for people who attend the conference. Like, what would make you say the conference is successful? So we'll get to all of that. But the goal of today is for us to break this down. This is the amazing conference program, which I want to tell y'all, I already have so many issues with it because there's not enough of me to go to multiple talks at once. And there's just so much good stuff. Like, I've got so many things highlighted that I'm like, I can't go to both of these, or, oh shoot, I have to speak and I guess I have to be there instead of at this. So, which is so cool, right? It's so exciting. So we're going to talk a lot about what to expect, what are the things that you should know, but what are the things you might not know that are actually some of the biggest benefits of the conference. So the goal of today is for us to talk about all things related to IOCDF conference, IOCDF programming, and really to help get you prepared. So first, to start, just a reminder, our conference is legit next week, which is crazy. Like, oh my gosh. And so it is in San Francisco. This is our second year back since COVID. And to be honest, last year, we were in Denver and it was kind of like we were back, but we were all kind of still scared. And I feel like this year we're really going to be able to be back, be present, and kind of get back to that true, fully immersive conference experience that we want to be able to host and offer as the IOCDF. So Susan, why don't we start with you? I'd love to just hear a little bit about, first of all, I would love for you to just talk about why you love IOCDF, what it means to you, but also what does the conference mean to you? But then what do you hope it means to others?
The answer to that question has so evolved over the years that it's always interesting to think about what the IOCDF means to me. But it was the first place, answering as a mom, it was the first place that we found community. Mm-hmm. So it was the first time that my daughter found kids who thought like her and that she wasn't embarrassed or ashamed to talk about her thoughts and felt understood. And for me, it was the first time I found moms who were just thinking about mental health and having the same kinds of challenges in the home that we are, that I had found that very difficult to talk about in my local community. And I went there and we all just poured this energy into each other. And in fact, one of those moms from, I don't know even how long, 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, just texted me last night. It was like, hey, are you guys going to the conference? What are you doing? We can't make it this year, but let's meet in New York. And I was like, this is so, those long-term friendships where we all have a really special understanding of what our children have fought through, or what individuals have fought through, is just so special. So that's probably the main thing the conference means to me, is that elimination of shame and finding community. And then I could answer as the board of directors and what we're trying to accomplish and what it means to us from that standpoint. But I really think that question of connection is what most people are really looking for at the conference, and education. We have clinicians presenting, we have lived experience presenting, we have young adults presenting, teenagers that have gotten through the worst of it and are available there for you to hear from them. We have programming for kids and adults and family members, and we've got the best researchers in the world literally traveling in to talk to all of us. And anyone can go to those presentations and learn what the cutting edge research is for OCD. So it's just such an exciting place to go. I think we're one of the few conferences where you truly do have lived experience, you have family members, you have researchers, and you have treatment providers all in the same place, all friendly, all willing to help, to answer questions, to think things through. It's an amazing community.
It's the best. I really think so. Steph, tell us about your thoughts and goals.
No, I think where, Susan just ended is one of the most unique things about our conference. You truly don't see that anywhere else, where everyone is all together. I've been to other conferences in other fields and for other reasons, and it's just never the same. You can't recreate it anywhere else. And so I so value that. And I so love seeing and returning to it year after year. Jeff Bell just wrote a blog post for us where he called it a family reunion. I just thought that was such a nice way to put it. Just talking about, it really does become your family, all the people you see there. And in the way Susan was saying, it is the best of the best. Everyone's kind of together in one room, in one hotel, at least, maybe not in one room, certain moments. But everyone's just so kind and so giving, where, you don't have to feel nervous to approach your hero, like someone who wrote a book that really changed your life. Or, if you're a therapist, you'll see other folks with lived experiences and family members, and learning from them in some ways could be even more powerful for your treatment journey than learning from fellow therapists. And then I think Another thing is, you know, the ages. I think it's also so compelling to see the youngest members of our community, as Susan so beautifully put it. And it's just there's something so magical, I think, about seeing little children running around doing exposure activities in the hallway, and just understanding what that means, you know, for everyone, you know, not even just that they're doing this at such a young age, but just the feeling it gives you seeing that. So I think my goals, I don't know, it's tough to have goals, you know, in the role that we as the staff play, but for so many of the people on the staff, the conference is their only opportunity to actually see our beautiful community in person, and in action. Because so many of us, you know, we sit behind our desks, maybe we have our nice little spreadsheets and, you know, whatever our role may be. And this is kind of the one chance a year we have to actually meet you all and to talk to you all and to see, and, you know, the impact of the work the foundation does. So from a staff perspective, I think that's always so powerful. But I would define a successful conference by you all having a wonderful time there. So please, hopefully, let's make that goal happen.
Yeah. Chris, I want to I know you were going to say something, so I'll cut you off because I always do. Can you share what the conference means to you? And I mean, I know you've talked a little bit about this before, but I think that it's really important for us to all share that.
Yeah, real quick, I want to touch on, you know, what you were talking about, Susan. My mom and I were reflecting about the conference this year, and she went to her first conference when I was at my worst. And I remember her coming back and just saying, okay, I feel hopeful. I met a lot of people. And then the other thing we reflected on is the point that you just brought up, Steph, is, you know, just the fact that everybody's so approachable. I've been to other events and conferences and things where it's like somebody will come out and speak and then disappear behind the curtain. And so just to have that experience, man, I mean, the conference for me personally, I went to my first conference when I was in the middle of it. We had planned to be there for all 3 days, and I was so triggered my first day that we unfortunately had to head home. I couldn't stay the whole 3 days. But that's actually when I first, I didn't meet Liz. I saw Liz. I wouldn't have met her because that would have been way too intense for my OCD. I was so afraid to be around people for health reasons and contamination and harm thoughts that I was experiencing. And unfortunately, it was too much. But I remember seeing Liz speak at that conference, and Liz and I are around the same age. And I just remember her being way, way ahead of me in her journey and thinking, okay, this is somebody that I really relate to. And I'm hearing her talk, and I'm hearing her talk about how hard her life has been and how small her life had been and the struggles she had gone through and the struggles her family had gone through. And my OCD was very severe like Liz's. And so my mom and I didn't leave thinking like, oh, you know, nobody out there is going through what Chris. It was quite the opposite. I remember us driving home from that conference and reflecting, and I was like, I can be like Liz, I can get better and stuff. So that's why I'm always forever in debt to Liz and her bravery for speaking, because it had such an impact on my recovery. I remember leaving the conference, and my therapist and I credit it as one of the reasons that I kind of turned my treatment around and really got better. So when you were speaking about the powerful of hearing somebody else going through that lived experience, I mean, Liz was really that for me, and the conference provided that safe space for me to really, really feel like there was hope. And the hope for my mom the year before when she heard from other parents and clinicians that people can get better. That was our biggest fear, is you couldn't.
I love it. Yeah, I think that, and just to say what the conference means to me, I started attending the conference when I was 17, and the first conference I attended, I actually submitted a talk and got up and talked. And I think that for me, the conference has kind of become my life. Like I talk about that, and I like truly mean that when I say that, which is that, you know, a lot of times when you hear a conference, you think you're like going to these big, you know, halls and just sitting and listening and taking notes and leaving, and that like you learn some new information, right? You gain some new education. Like I feel like that's what you kind of expect from a conference. But for those of us that have been to this conference or that frequent it, it truly is so much more for us. It is a place where we connect, where we realize we're not alone, where we build our own community, and a place where we gain hope. You know, we get to hear from other people who have walked a similar journey, who are doing better. We also get to hear from experts. We get to, I mean, the amount of content that's available to you to kind of pick and choose what you need to hear. That to me is what I love, you know, and if someone were to ask me, I just hope that the conference is offering, and I know it is, content, opportunities, connections that are going to give you what you need at any given moment. Mm-hmm. I can remember some of my most impactful conference moments where it was the beginning of my advocacy journey, and it was seeing the impact that my story could have on other people, which led me to do this work. I remember one conference, I was really struggling, and John Grayson saw me in the hall and he's like, Liz, come over here, I need to talk to you for a second. And I was like, hey, John, how's it going? And he's like, what's going on? And I was like, nothing, I'm fine. And he was like, but you're not fine. Like, I can tell you're not fine. Like, what's going on? And I remember just crying and being being so touched that, like, here was a clinician who had seen me through the years and kind of like, he was never my clinician, but that could just see the struggle in my eyes. And like, that to me is just like an example of the people that attend this conference and how much they care, and they're connected to humanity and to each other and to our struggle, and like this willingness to kind of not just call me out, but to say, like, what can I do and how can I push you? Because like, you deserve better. You can have a better life. Like, you don't have to have this struggle. And I just think what's so beautiful about this conference, and so we'll start talking about what we offer and what the conference offers, is that it offers so many things that I really do believe, whether you're a parent, a researcher, a caregiver, a clinician, or an individual, there is something at this conference that's what you need right now. And that is just so remarkable.
Yeah, my mom always makes the comment too. She's like, it's so affordable for how much they offer. And I think that's what's so cool as well, is there's so much, the price is right. And I can't imagine somebody going and not finding something in that program that's not for,
I think
there's something for everyone.
The thing that's so important for us to think about too is that, Chris, you and I could talk a lot about this. Susan, you could, and, Stephanie, you could, from what you've experienced and heard, is the conference doesn't start and end on Thursday and Sunday, right? It's the impact that it has and the connections that you build that are throughout the year, and as the foundation, some of us that are in the background of the foundation, right, what we know is that that's our bigger goal. Like, yes, we want this weekend to be great. We want this weekend to be successful, but our bigger goal is that this weekend catapults support in a community that lasts for you throughout the year and way beyond that,
the number of people that you meet that start talking about OCD or doing advocacy work because they went to the conference. And then, I often say, if I talk to a group of 4 people, at least one of them is going to come up to me afterwards and tell me about someone in their lives that's impacted by OCD, right? So all the work that we do at the conference, a few thousand people will come, but those few thousand people then will go out into the world. And some of them will make the choice to tell a story to a group of people who will then help someone that doesn't have any idea about what's currently happening to their lives. And there's so many people that don't even know what OCD is. They don't know what they're suffering from. And that's such a common story. And I think the education that we do at the conference and the destigmatizing, if that's a word, where we just like reduce that shame about talking about it, because you do realize how many people have the exact same thing that you do. That to me is a really impactful part of the conference too. I feel like we're sending out the world, sending out advocates into the world after the conference.
Oh, you are. I can promise you that. So let's talk about, Susan's mentioned 4 different kind of components and legs of the conference that we hope it reaches. And so we'll start with the first one that you mentioned, which is connection. Stephanie, why don't you talk about just kind of like, Steph, you can share where connection exists, what it looks like, how people can seek it out, what they can expect.
Yeah, I would think of it, and there's kind of 2 ways. There's informal and formal. So when we're thinking about, I'll start with the formal connection opportunities. We have a ton of support groups that actually I think are one of the most underrated parts of the conference. So Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, there's a ton, I think 2 time slots of support groups around a variety of things. So it could be an aspect of your identity. We have, gender and sexuality based groups, racial and ethnic identity-based groups, whether you're a parent of a parent guardian of someone of a certain age-based groups, or they could be an aspect of your OCD if you're someone who is living with OCD. So we have some groups for certain subtypes. We have support groups for certain comorbidities if you have OCD and something else. So almost everything you can think of, we hopefully have a group for it. And if you don't see one, please submit it for next year. I think that's always a good takeaway from any conversation about the topic, is create the conference you wish to see in the world. But I'll save that point for later. So for the formal connection opportunities, I always encourage people to consider the support groups and the evening activities, which tend to be more fun, more informal, more about making those connections and, social and networking, mentoring, all that good stuff. That doesn't mean you can't get that connection feeling during the daytime programming, during the more educational sessions, but I really think they blossom and come to life as part of the support groups and evening activities. And then for the informal opportunities, the conference is full of what I've heard referred to as kind of those hallway conversations, where just as you're passing someone, you say, oh, hey, we've already mentioned John Grayson, so I'll use him as an example. There's John Grayson. I'd like to go talk to him. You could just go up, say, hey, Dr. Grayson, I'm so-and-so. Thank you for that book you wrote or that activity you ran. And you will probably end up in a 10-minute conversation with him. If you are in a session and you love the speakers, you will be able to go up to them right after the session and talk to them, even outside of the Q&A portion of whatever the session may have been. And then you also see the later the conference goes on, more and more people have already made those connections. So by the time Saturday rolls around, for example, we're all having the time of our lives at the Saturday night party. People are, in groups talking as if they've known each other their whole lives, when really they may have just met yesterday. So we do try to build in those opportunities for those formal ones, but then it just happens organically and informally, especially the longer it goes and the more time folks have spent in the beautiful community that the conference creates.
Yeah, I also think that, that those informal ones you're talking about, Steph, they can be, like, just so people know, that can be you're sitting next to Susan at a talk and her and I start talking about share, right? It could be the person you're sitting next to at a talk, that person in the hallway, and the exhibit hall. Like, the exhibit hall becomes the place that everyone goes because people are working booths. Sometimes those of us that are clinicians hang out at our clinic's booth for a couple hours, or at the IOCDF booth as board of directors. And that is a place I feel like where I find myself having a little bit more quiet time if I'm in there in between, or during talks where people come in and get to talk and connect. And so that's a place where you can intentionally go if you're wanting to ask questions or connect, is that exhibit hall is a place where we're standing around to be able to connect. That's the point of people's presence in that exhibit hall. And so just something to kind of throw out there.
I always figure if we're outside of our rooms, we're there and open to being talked to. So please don't be shy about coming up and talking to any of us, right? That's literally, I don't think I get on an elevator that someone's not like, hey, can I ask you a question, or just whatever. And half the time it's not even because they know that I'm sit on the board of directors or I'm a mom or whatever. It's more just because I smile at someone in the elevator and say hi, and then they'll look at my badge and be like, oh, can you tell me where to go next? And it's just, gosh, it's a friendly. Liz and I were actually at the bedside of a very sick treatment provider recently, and we were, he was super ill, and he literally said, but don't worry, I'm going to get healthy in time to go to the conference. And I thought to myself, wow, I don't know if he will or not, but the fact that here's this person who's given so much to so many patients over the years, and in this moment is hey, my goal is to be there at the conference for other people. And I was like, okay, maybe, let's work on health first. But wow, the generosity of this entire group of folks at this conference is really important. And I'm watching some of the chat about bad experiences people have had in other places. And I'm just so grateful to see that reconciliation back to this community, whether it's the Faith and OCD SIG, or whether it's the conference, or this amazing group of people here, Liz and Chris, and how much they give and how hard they work to create diverse perspectives. And nothing's ever perfect. We learn that with all of our OCD work, right? But we hope that we can continue to give healing experiences to everyone.
Yeah. And I think that, what Steph was saying that I just want to throw out, or Chris was saying, is it really is about a healing experience, but this conference is one of a kind. And when I tell you that, Chris and I and Steph, we're in the mental health field. You do not get to go to another conference that is a mixed group of professionals, individuals, researchers, family members. That doesn't exist. It's usually oh, here's a conference for the individuals, or here's a conference for clinicians. But you get to go and handpick what clinician you want to talk to or grab in the hall. Or Chris and I were just so humbled last year by so many people being every time they saw Chris, they're where's Liz? Every time they saw me, they're where's Chris? And they thought we were married and we should always be together because we do our lives together, and we just loved it. But Chris, we had to meet so many people last year that watch our lives, that we felt connected to. We knew their names, but we got to see them in person.
Yeah, no, it was so humbling and insane and so sweet. I mean, I think, you know, when the IOCDF put out, I know you've been doing lives for a long time, Liz, and Ethan's been doing them since the start of the pandemic. And I didn't realize how many people were struggling. And the IOCDF was able to put together a live stream. And so when Liz and I were at the conference, people were coming up, oh my God, we watch your live streams. And yeah, they assumed that Liz and I are handcuffed because they were always like, where's Liz and things. But
why are you all together?
I do believe that what I've loved about the IOCDF is that, you know, the one good thing that came out of the pandemic is all the virtual stuff that it's been able to offer, like the conferences. And I think what I see is it just has gotten more and more people involved with the foundation. And to me, the conference is like that big cherry on top. You know, there's been so many resources, there's research and everything. And then you come to this conference and it's like, bam, it's all the year-long walks and the OCD Awareness Weeks events and everything in one. The other thing too, when everyone was talking about the conference, what I always remind people why they should come is there's so many people that live in areas of this country, also this world, where they cannot find a treatment provider. There's not a lot of treatment for them. There's not a lot of resources. And the conference pretty much brings like the top of the top in one. I keep wanting to say room, but one hotel. So that's the other thing I love about this conference as well, is for people that really struggle to find resources in their maybe rural areas, or they're from an area that doesn't have a lot of resources, you will be able to see presentations where the latest research is being showcased, or clinicians are talking about like what the treatment looks like now. So if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of resources from where you're from, this is a place to get a lot of it stuffed in I call it 4 days because of all the events on Thursday, but pretty much 4 days of the conference. I think that's huge as well.
If it tells y'all anything, I went to the conference last year when I had a 2-week-old because I could not miss the conference, right? Like it's just such a great place. So, okay, so let's get to what we offer and how to navigate it. So Steph, why don't you start by walking us through just kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what sort of events are available and accessible and that sort of thing.
Sure, absolutely. So Thursday is when we officially open. So during the day for researchers, we have our research symposium, which brings together all the latest and greatest in OCD research. They talk about, you know, what's kind of some trends in the field, what's promising, what's looking cool these days, and also allow some opportunities for networking and collaboration among those researchers. We'll start opening our check-in and registration at 2 p.m. local time. But then there's not really any formal activities until the support groups and evening activities start at 6 p.m. local time. So at 6 p.m. and then again at 8 p.m., we have a whole bunch of either fun or support group or mentoring or networking activities that are taking place for all ages. So our youth programming begins that night, as well as our programming for, those who are over 18 as well. And then Friday is when we start getting into the educational things. So the general conference day runs from 8 to 5:30, and there's 5 time slots with a 15-minute break in between. And then there's a longer 1:15 lunch break midday. So we want everyone to keep taking care of themselves in that way. So we have tracks for all of the various populations you've heard talked about. So folks who live with OCD or related disorders, therapists, we have a parent guardian track, you have a young adult track, which is always very popular and well attended. And then we have all 3 age groups of youth. So we have elementary schoolers, middle schoolers, and high schoolers. We have separate programming for each of those age groups. New this year, each day has its own related disorder. So Friday, there's going to be talks for BDD or body dysmorphic disorder, which I know Chris is super excited about.
So excited about.
Saturday, there'll be workshops for hoarding disorder. And Sunday, there'll be workshops for the body-focused repetitive behaviors, so both hair pulling and skin picking. So that's new this year. So we're excited to see how that's going to go. What I generally tell folks, because it can be overwhelming, look at, Liz was just holding up her program guide, and that's what everyone receives when you check in. It can be overwhelming to look at that grid and see those 10, those 9 tracks, all the colors, all the talks, and there's so much that sounds good. What I generally tell folks is, if it's your first time, start by who you are. So if you're someone who lives with OCD, we have a Living with OCD track that probably look there first. And if you look there and it doesn't look interesting, then maybe look at the other tracks. But yeah, she'll show you what the grid looks like.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's important to kind of know. So on the side of the program, it has who it's for. So everyone intro, everyone advanced, living with OCD, young adults, parents and families, BDD, which has a specific track this year on Friday, which is amazing. Therapist intro, therapist advanced, and then emerging trends. So this tends to be like research. So I'm just, Steph is giving you all this stuff and you're thinking, how do I figure that out? Well, like they've color coded it, and then the key is on the side that makes it super simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's, I also think another way to approach the conference is, what are your burning questions? Like, what are you personally hoping to get out of it? So maybe you have a certain theme in your OCD that you've been really struggling with lately. Maybe take a look and see if there's a talk or a support group about that theme. So you can either, learn more about it if it's an educational session, or meet others who are also living with that theme. If you're a therapist, in the way Liz was just showing, if you've never treated OCD before, or only just starting to work with OCD, we have a beautifully curriculumed intro therapist track. So by the end of the weekend, you will have a pretty good idea about beginning your work or continuing to refine your work. Or if you're one of our many therapists who has been doing this for as long as you can remember, hopefully we still have some nice, interesting stuff for you about, new updates in the field, or new things to consider, or ways to approach working with your clients. So yeah, and then, every night also has its support groups and evening activities, like we were saying earlier. Some of the highlights, every year we have that party I mentioned on Saturday night, which it's truly just one big party. Come and dance and, have some food and just hang out with all the friends you've made over the weekend. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else is. So the Emerging Trends New Direction is also, it's a new name, but not a new concept. So we used to call it the Research to Clinical
Research.
Exactly. So it's all about translating what the researchers are working so hard to discover in their work to actually make its way into what the therapists are doing in their work. Yeah.
Susan, if I can ask you, you've been so instrumental in helping advance the youth programming, the teen programming, and the transition into the young adult programming. I would say when we've been promoting the conference, just myself and OCD SoCal, the biggest questions we're getting about the kids, is it all like school, or are they going to have activity? Like, I think that was the biggest question, is like, my kid is kind of excited, but doesn't want to go to school, So I obviously know the answer to this, but can you maybe talk to the parents that are not sure if it's right for their kids, and what can their kids expect at each level of the kids programming?
I think the better way to think of it is camp as opposed to school, because we know that not every child is going to want to do all OCD all day long, right? No kid, actually. And so what we're trying to accomplish is to teach some principles and some information about OCD that will both help destigmatize and also let you go home with some cool tools to use, but also to have fun. And we're really there to connect with other kids that have OCD, to learn a little bit from the therapists that come in about fun ways that you might be able to explain or to understand OCD, but it's genuinely a fun day. There's always art activities and calming activities going on, as well as we might be watching a movie in one session, another session we might be playing with gooey things, but there's always an alternate activity. So let's say we're playing with gooey things and a child can't play with gooey things for whatever reason that they might have going on, they can do an art project at the same time and just be there in that space. And if there's ever a time when they're not comfortable, then we always set up arrangements so that parents can come back, and take the child out for part of the session. We have breaks between sessions for parents to come back and check in. But we really try to make it just a friendly, fun space. It's age appropriate. So we have an elementary school room where, there's sort of 4 to 5 year olds up to, 5th grade will be, and we have a nice middle school room, which is always amazing. It's just an amazing space, because you would always think, oh, middle schoolers, how are you ever going to talk about OCD and vulnerability and courage? And it's like such a powerful space. It's always, always an incredible space. And they have activities that are appropriate to their age. And then we have a high school room. And I got to do the wrap up last year. There was like a crisis. Someone had to leave, and I got thrown into the high school room, and I was so anxious. I was like, oh my God, I'm the substitute teacher. This is like a nightmare, like I'm going to go in there and like, it's not going to float if I say, hey, I'm the president of the board of directors. That's not going to be cool. So I go in and I just get to know the kids, and we're talking, and I'm telling you, like by the end I was in tears. like the things the high schoolers had come to over the course of 3 days and what they were sharing with each other and who they were, how they were talking about what they wanted their parents to learn and how sad they were and need to be leaving that environment. That actually, I always think the hardest part of the conference is the last few hours. It's after the conference. Maybe that's the hardest part, right? When you leave and you go home and you're like, oh, I had like friends that understood everything about me for 3 days, and now I'm going into the world. And I think that's like a hard, like genuinely hard transition. I love that we have lives now that people can go to afterwards to be like, I'm decompressing. But you know, that kid, I was so nervous, and I will, full disclosure, I was so nervous. I did not want to bring my daughter the first year. I was worried about her picking up other OCD tendencies that she didn't already have. And we were already like 24/7. So I was like, you know, we don't have moral scrupulosity. We don't need to pick it up. That's not the way it works. But by the time I took her there and was like an hour in, I was like in tears over how happy she was. Like just the joy on her face, talking to another little girl who had something going on. And in fact, she would talk to me about it afterwards. Well, that seems silly that she's afraid to touch the elevator button. And I was like, well, she might think it's silly that you're afraid to lick an apple, but can you see how, like, we were learning empathy skills at the same time. So the kids part is the most amazing part of the whole conference to me. It's something Steph has like dedicated so much time to building, and so many parents and clinicians just pour their time into getting that part right, because we know how hard it is to do it right for kids, right? That's a much harder. Give me adults data, a bunch of high schoolers, and I'm like, oh, I'm sweating. But the kids are amazing. The kids' generosity is amazing to each other. They want to help each other. They're interested in this. So that's what I have to say about the kids' room, unless you have other questions. Oh, sometimes parents will ask, what if my kid needs to go to the bathroom? I will say independence at that level, like just that one level, is pretty important. If your child is not in a safe place where they can use the restroom, because we do not have 30 people in the room to walk each child. Sometimes we can manage that, but it's not a preschool. So that's the only thing I would say, is we do not have a preschool room. Siblings are welcome in all of our rooms, and sometimes that will give us a younger child in the space, but they do need to be able to take care of that one particular aspect of their lives.
I want someone to talk about the fun, so we're talking all about conference and programming, which is awesome. And this is the education component. We talked about education, we talked about community, but let's talk about the fun, because I think so many of these fun events are actually like the ways that community is built. And even what Susan's talking about is like, yes, they're doing educational content in the youth programming, but they're also having fun, and they're connecting, and they're like doing stuff together, and they're building this rapport that's just kind of the beauty of like a milieu or a group setting. But Steph, can you also talk about the dedicated events that are specific for fun, for connection, for community?
Oh, absolutely. Well, so first of all, we start right off the bat on Thursday. For those of you who are going to be able to join us on Thursday night, we have a welcome event that is hosted by not only our OCD San Francisco Bay Area, which is our local affiliate, but there'll be representatives from all our affiliates there. And I think the cool thing about that is, in the way we've sort of been alluding to and talking about, getting connected with your local affiliate will help you after the fact. That will be who you can go to the other 362 days of the year that there is an annual OCD conference to go to. So that will be a great place where they're all going to be there in one place. You can go get to know them and also have a little fun and start getting to know people before anything even has time to begin. That will be right off the bat. That's going to be 8 p.m. on Thursday. Definitely come join us right in the hotel. You'll see a lot of signs, and you'll probably hear the laughter and know you're heading in the right place. I guess there's certain people's definition of fun. So every night we do try to have something that is only for fun, but then there's things like the Road to Recovery, formerly called virtual camping, which might be more challenging than it is fun, but I do think people ultimately have fun in that. Would you say, Liz and Chris? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is like my favorite part of the conference. Yeah. And it is just like, we do exposures together, but you're with John Grayson and you're having fun. And I feel like this is the thing we hear over and over. That was one of the most like life-changing moments of the conference, was getting to be with other people doing exposure. So yeah, I think it's It's funny and difficult.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I remember doing it. I think it was back at the Atlanta conference. And it was funny because you would think, just a bunch of solemn faces. We're going out with John Grayson, like a pretty, hardcore therapist, and we're all walking around. We're going to have to walk in the city together. But everybody was like laughing and giggling and like rooting people on. Because I think deep down, everybody knows that's what we got to do to get better. We got to push against sort of that fear. And what better to do it with a clinician, with a supported environment. So I love that. Absolutely. And I know I wanted to say real quick, we'll get back to the fun. I think this is fun too. I know a lot of people, the other thing that people worry about is coming alone. But John Grayson is actually, speaking of John Grayson, is actually kicking off an event, right, Steph, on Thursday for people that like an icebreakers event.
It's not John Grayson, but you were right about everything else. It's a solo attendee. We have a solo attendee meetup for anyone who did come alone. And so I think the goal of that is just to walk out with at least one friend, if not more than one. But it's just a place for all the people who came alone to connect and to meet each other and to, start their conference weekend off right.
Yeah, so I thought that's going to be fun. Like if you're solo, if you're coming by yourself, there's going to be this really cool Thursday evening activity where you can hang out. You're going to play fun icebreaker games, just have a good time. And that way, my hope is that you meet somebody you click with so that the rest of the conference, you have someone to connect with. So that's exciting as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, so the Road to Recovery tour, which we were just talking about, which is both challenging and fun, that is on Friday. And then on Saturday, we have, of course, our big party that I've been talking about. I think we used to call it the Saturday Night Social. I think it's just, quote unquote, just called the OCD Conference Party now. But that's always a fun time. Always encourage folks to go there. And then we also have some, sort of separate little, depending on if you are, identify as part of a group. So for example, every night the young adults always do something. So whether it's a game night or a trivia night or just an informal hangout, they'll be happening on Friday and Saturday. I think we have an LGBTQIA community hangout that is happening, I believe, on Saturday. And then, on Friday, I should also mention for any of you who are, this is just making you more overwhelmed instead of more excited. There's a first-time attendee event on Friday where you can go and kind of both connect with other first-time attendees and kind of get some tips and tricks about how to navigate and have a good time and get the most out of your conference experience. So that's also on Friday. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff. And the way Liz started out by saying the biggest problem with the conference is wanting to do so many things that are happening at the same time. And it's arguably a good problem to have, though we recognize it is still a problem. Yeah.
And we have activities every night for the kids, I think, too. Like
Yes,
there's always
absolutely.
something separate, right? Stuff that the kids
Yes.
can do. Last year, I remember we did karaoke night. I don't know what we're doing this year. And this one young woman stood up at the very end and sang. And I was like, is this like American Idol? What is happening here? It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some people like just blow you away. Okay, Chris, please talk about, I think we've covered most of Susan's topics, so connection, education, research, but time to talk about advocacy and destigmatization and how that happens at the conference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm secretly excited. I'm secretly going to plug our talk. I mean, I think that's, one of the talks that I'm excited about is to speak with a lead in national advocates just about what we've seen, unfortunately, in the media. There's been a lot of stuff. I think the thing that impacted me personally the most is some of the New York Post articles about, unfortunately, somebody who engaged in some very horrific illegal activity somehow getting blamed back to OCD. But it's not going to be just a grim talk. We're going to talk about some of the amazing things that the IOCDF has done to push out like what OCD really is. But I think that that's a big part of it too, is we have a lot of our IOCD advocates coming. There's even an advocate luncheon. I think as it was talked about earlier, that the conference produces so many advocates. And one thing that I've always personally been sad about, and it's nothing to blame. It's just the way that things are, the way that our country looks at mental health versus physical health. I've always thought there are so many people struggling with this disorder. Like, why is it continuously not getting correctly identified in the media? And obviously the foundation is doing everything we possibly can. But I don't think it's just OCD. It's just the way that mental health is always spoken about. People making jokes about, I'm feeling bipolar today, or, they didn't have my favorite ice cream, I'm so depressed. So a lot of the talks are really doing that. You're going to see people with OCD and advocates speaking just about this is how we got to stomp out the stigma. This is how we have to promote what OCD really is. This is how you foster and build communities after the conference. This is how you can advocate. I know a lot of times my mom gets intimidated about advocacy because she's like, I'm not on social media, but there's so many great things people are doing not on social media for advocacy. There's huge things. I love what Kim Vicenti's nonprofit is doing, is like helping people get treatment. There's a lot of different people doing great things, what Susan obviously does for the PANS and PANDAS community. So there's so much good advocacy happening. So that's what I think a big part of the conference is as well, is there's a lot of new advocates. There's a lot of like tried and true advocates that are coming and really spreading that positive message. And then the other thing is like all of the people advocating for OCD are doing it all over the world, and sort of come together and really connect. And I see a lot of those connections happening at the conference, and people kind of planning different campaigns and stuff for OCD Awareness Week. So I think if you're somebody that has OCD, or loves somebody with OCD, or supports somebody with OCD, and you want to become an advocate or figure out how to engage in advocacy, I know there's also an event Saturday night really just dedicated on how you can take your story and really advocate and get to know some of the IOCDF advocates. So I definitely think that's a huge part. I think the other cool part is you start seeing all the young advocates too. We have the Kids Hero Award presented by Unstuck and the Bear family, and you see all these little advocates. And I think that's such the future, is these kids that are speaking up in 3rd grade and 5th grade and 7th grade, and really supporting people with OCD at such an early age is going to be the way that in 20, 30 years, people will absolutely know and understand OCD. So advocacy is also such a big component. I'm geeked out about it. Liz, how about for you?
No, yeah, oh, totally. And I think, so Michael Janicki and myself, and I think Ethan used to do this panel that I loved so much, that was about advocacy being like the hidden ingredient in treatment, and how we talked about, when you think about like a substance use model, right? After you do 12 steps, what's the final step? Well, it's to become a sponsor, and it's to start helping someone else, right? Because it is such a, like, you guys might think, well, why is advocacy that important? I don't want to do advocacy. Advocacy doesn't mean you have to go tell your story on a national platform. Advocacy can just mean that you connect and talk to someone else, and that you help support them through their journey. And the reason it is just so important, you guys, is that it really creates this like full circle experience of like, you struggle, you get treatment, and then you help someone else. And for me, it just really puts things both into perspective, but also it allows you to say, okay, there's some sort of purpose to my pain, right? Like something good came out of my struggle because I could help someone else. And there's just so much meaning in that. Like you really, it serves you and it serves your OCD so much by being able to help others and keep them accountable. It makes you keep yourself accountable. So advocacy just like happens naturally, and it happens when you don't expect it, and in ways that you're like, oh wow, this is so powerful, right? Because really the first step to advocacy is at the conference, when you hear someone else that connects with you and that it helps you on your journey. And then later you're like, oh, I want to be like that, or I want to help do that for someone else, right? It's kind of, so advocacy doesn't have to mean you're out there telling your story on a national, it can just be happening slowly and surely. The other piece is so many people are connecting with advocates who they haven't met in person, and the conferences when they get to meet in person for the first time and connect and, you know, talk to Chris, who you saw on a live stream, or connect with Katie or Ethan or whoever it might be, these other advocates you're doing campaigns with, and with Alex and whatever, right? And that's just so exciting. I want to give like a quick vulnerable story. So just because I feel like it's important to talk about all the people the conference can impact. So you guys, y'all know, like, this is what I do. I do OCD work all the time. That's what I talk about. And last night my husband was like, well, I feel like there's a lot of OCD in our relationship. You know, I'm gonna call him out because y'all know I do that. And a lot of OCD in this relationship that like you just push under the rug and like we're not addressing. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, where does my OCD come up right now that's impacting our relationship? You know, because I feel like I have a pretty good handle on it. And he's like, you know, like, you want me to put things in a certain place and everything has to be perfect. You guys, it was like crawling in my skin of like, how is my husband mislabeling OCD? Like, of all people, like, how is he? And so I had to like take my deep breath and let him finish. And then I was like, so Matt, like, as you know, there's a big difference between OCD and like OCPD or personality stuff. And there's no doubt that like, I am particular and I do definitely like things a certain place in our house, but like, that is not my OCD. And what it actually, my husband wasn't planning to come to the conference because we have 2 kids under 2 and he needs to be at home. But like now I'm like, you know what, maybe Matt needs to come to the conference because I feel like he needs, but I want us to remember that the conference is for spouses. It is for siblings as well, right? It's not just for a parent. It's not right. And for a lot of us, like at least my husband, that's where he would actually learn and meet other spouses of people with OCD and be able to connect and to make these different connections in this community, and it would be so useful and helpful for him. So I'm going to encourage him to come, but I'm just like plugging that because I want to give a reminder that sometimes people who I would not have thought my husband would have mislabeled OCD like that. And I was just sitting there and y'all know me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like don't interrupt, but like let it go. And then I'm like, so let's like talk about what would be my OCD versus what isn't my OCD. Like even, like our kids wash their hands, but like I actually let them cross contaminate and there's not my OCD there. That's just like a normal hand wash. And those are two different things. And he's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I guess that's true, and there's probably some places my OCD may still come up. Like, I don't want to pretend like it doesn't at all, that we should still address, but he needs that education too, right? He needs support. He needs a community. And that's just a really important piece, is that I don't want any of us to think that the community or the talks are just for individuals or just for parents. It's also for spouses. It's also for siblings, because they really need that support and education too.
Absolutely.
Susan, final thoughts? Oh, Chris, sorry.
I was going to have Steph, can you talk real quick? I know one big thing is clinicians want to know about CEs and continued education. So I think that's also a big part for many therapists' careers is to come not only get the education to help them be a better OCD treatment provider, but the continued education. I think that's huge for a lot of clinicians.
No, of course. Yeah. So we're able to offer continuing education for psychologists, for social workers, for counselors. And then we also get ACCME, which is for medical doctors or MDs and nurses, and I think physician's assistants, anyone who does the continuing medical education, we have that as well. And then on the schedule, when you come, and it's also on the app and online, but all the sessions that are eligible for CEs are clearly marked on the schedule. They have a big, bold outline around them. And then on the app, I think there's a tag that says CE eligible. So that's the online schedule and the app for smartphones, if you do have that. And you can earn up to 19.75 for the whole conference. You can only do one session at a time block. So don't think you can go to 2 sessions at once and, kind of get more credit than that. So it's kind of up to that 19.75 credit hours for whatever your discipline may be. But yeah, it's a really great opportunity. There's at least 3 CE eligible sessions in any given time block. So a lot of really good variety. And a lot of really interesting and up and coming stuff. So both for those who are new to OCD and for those who have been doing it for a while, hopefully will be a fun and rewarding way, in the way you were saying, Chris, of getting your CEs for the year. Yeah.
Steph, can you tell us how you figure out which ones are CE eligible? Because I was struggling with that when I was marking on my own. Is it all the ones that are for therapists? So therapist intro, advanced, or research?
Exactly. Yeah. So those are the minimum 3 that are guaranteed, are the 2 therapist tracks, intro, advanced, and then the emerging trends, new directions. And then every now and then a talk in one of the other tracks will also be CE eligible. But honestly, the main distinguishing factor is just that it is speaking to a topic relevant to clinical practice. So you'll see, I don't think there's anything in the Living with OCD track, for example, which in some ways is a shame, because I do think it would be nice for therapists to listen to those talks and to hear about what's happening there. Hopefully, maybe they still will, and maybe just not take their full CE allotment that they need. But yeah, that's basically how those decisions are made, just on the little peek behind the curtain on the CE CME world. But yeah.
Perfect. Super helpful. I'm laughing because Matt is asking if we're going to share my Spanish commercial.
Yes, Liz did a Spanish commercial, so I promised that we were going to share it. The other thing is, I don't know if you saw Val's comment to you, Liz. Val was saying my husband definitely needs a refresher. So maybe your husband and Valerie Andrews' husband could hang out.
Send them off together,
Yeah.
We also get a lot of guys. We get a lot of parents of older sufferers, like adult sufferers, who maybe haven't found help. And so, yes, you can absolutely come on your own. If you do not have the person with you that's suffering, you might still be able to find help at the conference. There's lots of people you can talk to and lots of people that have been on that path. And I think that's just an important group of folks to call out, that there is definitely programming there for you as well.
Yeah, and Padmini asked at 12:35 if there was stuff for adults, because I know we were talking a lot about kids and stuff. So maybe can either Susan or Steph or Liz talk to that? Like, is it, because we talked a lot about kids and young adults and clinicians, but is there stuff for adults?
Yeah, honestly, I think the reason we have been talking mostly about kids and the young adults is because for the rest of the conference, the baseline is talking to an adult audience, or to and about. But then also, in the way Susan was highlighting, we have actually a vested interest in more content for parents of adults, because we do pretty well, or well, arguably, but we try our best with parents of the younger folks. But parents of adult children or adult folks with OCD, that they have kind of different needs and different things they want to learn, and how to support their loved one and how to support themselves. So that's a focus. And then just because I see Val on there, Val and a few other of our awesome advocates are going to be leading a support group specifically for older adults. So folks, I think even older than the 40 and above that, the 40 that Padmini is mentioning here. So we're really excited to have that content, and thank Val and that group for their tireless advocacy specifically about OCD in an aging population.
We're also excited. Go ahead, Susan. Sorry.
I just want to close with, if you can't come to the conference, we do move it around every single year. So just because it's in California next year, to be in the Southeast the year after that, I think it's the Northeast after that, and then the Midwest. So we keep moving it around the country to make it more and more accessible to more people. And then also we have a wonderful online conference that we do every year as well. So if you're unable to travel for whatever reason and you're like, oh gosh, this sounds so lovely, we're able to create a lot of that same content and connection points through our online OCD conference. So I don't want to neglect to mention that if you're unable to make it to San Francisco this year.
And as promised, my Spanish link was posted so that y'all can all watch it and embarrass me and roast me at our next live streams. And we are not going to have any live streams next week because we'll be at the conference, or it's July 4th. The live streams will be back the second week in July, which is crazy, y'all, that we're already in July. And so remember, the second week of July, that'll mean we'll have community conversations on Tuesday, and Wednesday will be research roundtable with Dr. Abramowitz and Kyle King. And then, of course, Chris and I will come back. Any of y'all that are coming to the conference, please grab Chris and I, say hi, grab Susan, grab Steph. We'd love to hear from y'all. That is why we go. And like Susan mentioned earlier, if we are out and about, it is free game to come up to us, grab us, and talk to us, right? For those of us like me that are introverts and need our alone time, we go to our hotel room for that. So we know that if we're out, we want you to come say hi. That's our goal. And what I will say is that most of us, if we are available, we will go sit at the IOCDF booth or one of the booths in the exhibit hall. So that's a great place to come grab us. Love your little plug, Val, to bring a sweater. I was just thinking that, as a Texan, I'm probably bringing a puffer jacket because it's San Fran in July. So, just think about what y'all need. But we are so excited. Can't wait for the conference. And I just want to give a huge special thanks to IOCDF for allowing the conference to be possible, because it is 100% life-changing, and it impacts so many people. And I know, or can only imagine, I guess I don't even know, everything that it goes on behind the scenes to make this event possible. So just thank you, because the community is the one that really gets to reap all the benefits and rewards. So excited.
Thank you guys.
All right.
For come on today.
Wait, real quick. Don't forget, online registration closes tomorrow, Thursday, June 29th at 12 noon Eastern time, right? 12 noon Eastern?
Yes.
I'm always mess up the time, the time. So if you go to iocdf.org/OCDCon, you can still register for the conference up until tomorrow, Thursday, June 29th, 12 Eastern. If you don't register online, you can absolutely still come and register in person. So in-person registration opens the day of Thursday, July 6th at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's the local time. So if you've missed that, if you felt hyped about this and you don't register, please don't not come. Show up in person, register in person, and make sure to share this live it's going to be on the YouTube channel, IOCDF. So go to youtube.com/IOCDF and send that to somebody that's interested in the conference. Hype them up, and we can't wait to see you all there. Thanks so much, Susan. Thanks so much, Steph. Thanks Liz. Thanks for everybody for joining us.
Bye.
See you at the conference.
Bye, guys. See you in a week. Yeah.
A week. It can't be that soon already.
And now Steph and Val has me nervous, you guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta bring jackets. I forgot about that. So
I know it's even cold.
What a relief from Houston.
I know it's even cold for me in SoCal. It's gonna be cold.
Oh, it's been 100+ here.